Hello guys and welcome to Blublock. Today we'll be doing something that we don't usually do. We'll be doing something completely and totally new. So, we'll be using this website called ChatGPT. Now, this is absolutely amazing. It's an AI. It's an AI that if you can ask it any question and it'll tell you exactly what you want. Maybe not exactly what you want, it might have some errors, but most of the time it generally gives you the correct answer. Now today we'll be using that to just try some things out with coding. Now I've already done these and it's just basically my conversations and of how what I wanted to be done got done by the AI. So we're gonna get into that. So what I input here was a huge code for a enemy. Now the enemy in the game just, moves around like a normal enemy in a game. And I copy and pasted my script into ChatGPT and it told me exactly what it was about. I'm going to read it. This script defines an enemy controller class that controls enemy behavior in a 2D platform game. The class is responsible for moving enemies along a predetermined patrol path and detecting collisions with the player. When a collision occurs, the class schedules a player-enemy collision event to be processed by the game's simulation system. Now this is a lot to read. The script also includes references to various components and assets that the enemy requires to function, including an animation controller, a collider 2D, an audio source, and a sprite renderer. These components are accessed in the awake method, which is called when the game object is first created. In the update method, the class checks if the patrol path has been defined for the enemy. If a path exists, the class creates a new mover object to move the enemy along a path at the speed of 50% of the maximum speed of the enemy's animation controller. The mover object is used to calculate the direction of speed of the enemy's movement. When a collision occurs with a player, the onCollision enter 2D method is called, and the class checks if the colliding game object has a player controller component. If the colliding object is a player, the class creates a new player-enemy collision event and sets the player and enemy properties to the appropriate objects. Now, all I did was copy and paste my code and explained everything that it was about. And you can do this if you don't even know what code you're talking about. If you just have a random piece of code, you can input that into ChatGPT. It'll tell you what's wrong with it, and it'll tell you what it is. So let's go down some more. And I gave it a different script called S, which is basically the player's attack, as you can see. And now it says, this script allows the player to perform a melee attack using a prefab object. The prefab object should be attached to the player and have a trigger collider that can detect when it hits an enemy or object. When the player presses the attack key, the script initiates the prefab object at the attack spawn point position and gives it a velocity to move forward in the direction the player is facing. The attack is destroyed after a set duration in the attack. The is attacking bool is set to false, allowing the player to attack again. Now, if you're wondering, this script, is in C# and I'm using a Unity. Can you write a script where my S attack script can hurt the enemy if the enemy touches it? That's why I gave it both the enemy script and my attack script. Certainly, you can modify the onCollision 2D function with the enemy controller script to detect collisions with the S attack prefab. Here is an example implement. I have a little struggle saying that word, but you know what I'm getting at. This is basically the enemy controller. It collided the enemy controller and the S attack script together in order to make the enemy explode when it gets to the attack. In the modified code, we checked if the collided game object has the S attack. If it does, then we know it's the S attack prefab that hits the enemy, so we destroy the game object using the destroy function and create an enemy killed event using the schedule function. Now this is basically where like I said, the attack, if it collides with the enemy, then the enemy will just explode. And then I asked it if it was going to work, because sometimes, like I said, the script doesn't usually work. Or not usually, but it sometimes doesn't work for me. Sometimes I ask it a question, and it doesn't work. You really have to be specific about what you're asking it, because if you don't ask it a specific thing, then your entire code could be messed up. It could be messed up seriously. So that's why I gave it my code and asked it a specific question. Can you write a script where my S-attack script can hurt the enemy if it touches it? Otherwise, it won't really give you the answer that you want it to give you. So here, I asked it if it was going to work, because sometimes if I do that, it will relook at the code and it will find errors in it, and it'll make another script where it is correct. Now, I found another error inside of the script that it gave me, because it wasn't totally correct. So, basically, in this error, it's saying that it can't really find the enemy killed directive. So it can't really check if the enemy is killed or not. But now, it's giving me this little code, where it's supposed to be at the top of my code, and it's supposed to basically have, this is the event for certain things to happen in my code. Now, I put that in there, and it gives me even more errors. Now, it's giving me an error about the thing that it just gave me. So it's saying, to fix this error, make sure that you have added the correct reference platform gameplay assembly in your script. It gave me the same code. And then I had told it that's the problem, because, you know, it's not working. So now it's telling me that I'm missing something again, and I specifically say, using that is a problem, and what package do I need? Because it's saying that I need a package. The platformer gameplay namespace, it's basically saying I need a new Unity 2D platformer package. I looked for it, and it does not work. And then, after re-looking at the code, I had realized that I don't even know what it gave me. I looked at the code, and I couldn't really find a use for enemy killed, because I never put that in there. So I asked, hold on, what's it for? And then it explains, and I was like, why did you use that? Because it doesn't make any sense. I didn't use that. I never even asked to use that, nor was it in my original code. So then it gives me an entirely different code without it, and then it gets even worse. It doesn't really work much at all. So then it gives me a modified code, and it worked a lot better. And I figured out in the code, because it can help you do this if you're a programmer, and it has errors. You can look at the code and find the specific error that it has in it, and using the power of my coding knowledge, I managed to solve the issue myself. So, now that I've solved the issue, it says, great to hear that you were able to solve the issue. If you have any other questions or concerns, feel free to ask. And that's what I did. I asked more questions on more things that I wanted it to do. I gave it the code that I had used, and then it agreed with it. So, basically, that is the first question that I had a little trouble with. And you really need to be more specific with what you're asking it, because if you do not, then things like that will happen. So the first question you always ask needs to be very specific, like I did. Okay, so here I asked it, can you write a script that keeps track of how many coins you collected for a 2D game in C#? That is very specific. You have to ask keep track of how many coins you've collected for a 2D game in C#. This is very specific. I could have just said, can you write a script that adds up all the coins that you've collected? That would be very bad, because it doesn't know if it's for a 2D game or a C# game. And that's really bad. So you need to be really specific. So here it says, sure, here's a basic script in C# that keeps track of the number of coins collected. So, now it knows that I want to do it in C# and I want to do it in 2D. Because sometimes if you don't specify those things, it will not listen, because it does not know that that's what you want. So it gives me the code, it tells me what it is, and then I said, cool, thanks, I'll see if this works. And it doesn't have any errors, but the code does not seem to work. And then it says, I'm sorry to hear that, can you please provide more details about what's not working? And then I said the coin count is not updating when I get a coin. And then it finds the issue back in the code. And then I said, I can't do that. If the player has a trigger on, very bad things will happen, such as the player will fall through the floor and collision won't be very good. So now it says, I understand. In that case, you could check if the object has collided with the coins you could check if the object that collided with the coin is the player before updating the coin count. So I told it that I can't do that because if the player trigger is on, very bad things will happen. It understands that, so it gives me a new code that does not have the trigger. So I asked, where am I supposed to add this script? As another way to add specificness. So I put it in a place, and then it gives me an error. The modifier private is not valid for this item. So then it gives me the error code. So then I said, okay, you don't have to add the trigger. Rewrite the code with just a code with the coins variable incrementing. Sure, here's an updated code without using triggers. I check it. No, stop. Just write a code to increment the coins variable. Nothing else. Just a simple increment. I already have the triggering down. So I tell it everything that I already have, and then it gives me what I need. And then so it gives me the great code, perfect code, I need it. And then I ask, could you make it to where every time the script is activated, the coins increase by 1? And it says sure, and then it gives me it. And then I ask it a question about the code. Will the coins keep incrementing as long as the script is on? And it says yes. And then I ask, I only want it to increment once when it is called. Is this possible? And then it says yes, it's possible. And then it gives me the code for that. So then I use that code and it gives me an error. So I give it the error, and it says the error usually occurs when the monobehavior class is not found. And then it gives me the code for that, and I say it works. I had successfully found it thanks to this AI. So you have to ask it specific questions, and if it asks you questions, you have to give it all the information that you have about it. You can't be vague. You can't say that, oh, I can't use the trigger because I don't want to. If you do that, then it will give you a code where there's no trigger, but it's better to practice being specific, so you can always be specific, so it'll give you the answer that you would like to have. Here I have a very essential piece of code that is needed for a game. If your player is going to have like attacks where it's like a projectile, and here I ask it if it could do the attack. Can you write the code for an attack? I have a circle that stays attached to the player until they press the Z button, then it shoots out in front of them, then disappears. Can you write the code for that in C#? Sure, here's an example of an attack where the circle shoots out of the player when the Z button is pressed. So it gives me the code, and I see it, and then I say, I'm sorry, I forgot to specify. This is not for a 2D game. Can you write it in 2D game form? And I realize that it's not in 2D because it uses some pieces of code that are not in 2D, such as Vector 3. That's only in 3D, not 2D, because I'm making a 2D game. And down here, it says, sure, here's an example of how you can implement the 2D attack in a 2D game. And then I ask it, is the code going to work successfully? And then it said the code should work as intended, assuming that you have properly set up the components and attached the script to the appropriate game objects in your scene. Now I asked it a question, what components do I need? Again, with the specifics, what components do I need? To implement the code for your attack, you will need a few components, and it tells me all the components I need listed using the numbers. And then it says I need to use a rigid body 2D, but then I don't know what setting it's it needs to be on because it doesn't tell me, so I ask it, what setting does the rigid body 2 need to be on? To allow the projectile to move, you need to set the rigid body 2D's body type to dynamic. And that is what I assumed. I assumed it would need to be on dynamic because that's the setting that I usually use for objects like that. And I said, that's what I thought. I'll try the code out and see if it works. Now it says, sounds good. Let me know if you run into any issues. So the code works just as fine, but their attack was only launched from the right side, not both sides. Now I asked it, and then now it's giving me a new script, but then the script was even worse, because now I can use the Z button non-stop, and the balls take a while to disappear. The projectiles do not disappear, they just keep on coming and coming and coming. So I asked it if it could alter the code again to include both the directions, without staying on the screen for too long, being very specific again. It gives me a new code, and this code is the successful code for what I need. This code, and I might have to modify it. Again, I sometimes need to modify the code because, like I said, not all the time it's correct. But if you ask it the right questions, tell it what's wrong, then it will correct it for you. Now, I have a great time with it. I ask it all the essential questions I need, and it's a great coding partner. ChatGPT is amazing. Whatever you need, it can help you with. Not just coding though, just anything. You can ask it any question and it will answer for you almost right away. So with that, that is about it. That's about all you need to know for today. And this I've only recently learned about this, and this is great. So I use it. I hope that you would use it. So this is it. Remember to like, subscribe, and we'll see you later. Blublock